Coming up in our newscast tonight. Seoul skiers are in North Korea's Masikryong ski resort to test a course and jointly train with North Korean athletes. They will be flying back home with Pyongyang's Winter Games competitors. In his first State of the Union address, U.S. President Donald Trump emphasizes he will not repeat the mistakes of his predecessors when dealing with North Korea, vowing to continue a maximum pressure campaign. Samsung's Q4 operating profits hits a quarterly record level. Welcome digits for the tech titan comes mainly on the back of its semiconductor businesses. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea. Time for Arirang News Center, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Che. The nation's skiers and coaches crossed the border to jointly train with their counterparts up north. Kim Young-il starts us off with the two-day session agreed upon as part of a series of events ahead of the Winter Olympics.
Some 31 skiers from South Korea have traveled to North Korea's Masikryong ski resort on Wednesday. The group of non-Olympic skiers and ski coaches took a chartered flight to the North Galma Airport, some 45 minutes away from the resort. On the first day, the skiers got used to the slopes of the Masikryong ski resort with some free skiing sessions. On the second day, the South and North Alpine and cross-country skiers will hold joint training sessions, including friendly races. North Korean skiers who will compete in PyeongChang 2018 will also be participating in the training session. Once the joint training ends on Thursday, the South Korean delegation will fly back home, accompanied by 10 North Korean athletes, including short track and figure skaters, as well as cross-country and alpine skiers. 12 members of the North Korean women's ice hockey team already arrived in the South last week. Prior to the joint event, South Korea has been in close consultation with the United States. The Seoul government has stated that the inter-Korean sports and cultural activities won't break the international community's sanctions on the North. Last September, the Trump administration announced a set of independent sanctions that included banning vessels and aircraft that have visited North Korea within 180 days from entering the U.S. Kim Young-il, Arirang News.
Former South Korean President Lee Myung-bak is invited to the PyeongChang Games. The formal invitation by the top office comes in spite of the ex-leader's recent verbal attacks against the current administration. Hwang Ho-jun has the full story.
At least for now, the political animosity between Korea's current president and former President Lee Myung-bak has decreased. Upon President Moon Jae-in's order, the senior presidential secretary for political affairs Han Byung-do visited ex-President Lee Myung-bak's office in southern Seoul on Wednesday afternoon. He delivered 2 letters of invitation. The first one, from the International Olympic Committee, is to the PyeongChang 2018 opening and closing ceremonies and major Olympic events. And the second, to receptions and dinners, is from President Moon Jae-in.
Well, I do hope the current government will successfully host the Olympics. There's much I want to say, but since I was invited today, please tell the president that I will positively consider accepting the invitation.
The invitations were made amid an investigation by prosecutors into corruption allegations against Lee. The prosecutors earlier said they will likely summon the former president for questioning once the PyeongChang Olympics comes to an end. Just a few weeks ago, Lee publicly accused the Moon administration, denouncing the ongoing probe against him as political retaliation over the suicide of former President Roh Moo-hyun, who committed suicide during a corruption investigation while Lee was in office. President Moon Jae-in in return said he is infuriated over the former President Lee Myung-bak talking about political retaliation while directly mentioning the death of the late former President Roh Moo-hyun, and that his accusation is an insult to the government. A Blue House official said the invitations were sent out of respect to honor the former president regardless of the situation. In fact, it was under the Lee administration that PyeongChang won the bidding to become only the 3rd non-European or American host of the Winter Games after losing the bids for the 2010 and 2014 Winter Olympics. However, Lee is the only living former president who got the invitation because the Honorable Treatment of Ex-Presidents Act does not extend to those who have been sentenced to imprisonment or heavier punishment, excluding former presidents Park Geun-hye, Chun Doo-hwan, and Roh Tae-woo from attending. The Blue House said it will also invite the former first ladies who qualify, namely late President Kim Young-sam's widow Sun Myung-sun, late President Kim Dae-jung's widow Lee Hee-ho, and late President Roh Moo-hyun's widow Kwon Yang-suk. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
The main press center for the Winter Games is ready to provide its service to journalists from all across the globe. Won Jong-han was at the opening ceremony of the MPC to show us how it will help spread the thrills and spills of the sporting event to the world.
While the official Olympic broadcasters are based at the International Broadcasting Center, the rest of the world's press is just down the road at the main press center in Pyeongchang's Alpensia Resort. A workplace for more than 3,000 journalists from more than 50 countries, the main press center is where live updates and footage will be sent from Pyeongchang 2018 to the rest of the world. The main press center will provide 24/7 support and telecommunication facilities to make sure reporters can send live results and news updates to their local stations around the globe at any time during the Games. Among the many services at the center, AI-equipped robots will be going around the venue delivering water and simple refreshments every day. The main press center is divided into 3 areas: the main workroom along the facilities including restaurants, the press conference rooms where the IOC and Pyeongchang's organizing committee can brief the press each day, and a working station for major news agencies such as Reuters and AP. As Pyeongchang's press center is near the venues for ski events, there's also a sub-media workroom in Gangneung, where the ice events will be held. The International Broadcasting Center also held a welcome reception on Wednesday. The 5-story high IBC will house some 10,000 officials from 60 broadcasters around the globe and will host IOC's executive board meeting this weekend. Won Jong-han, Arirang News, Pyeongchang.
Over in Washington, the highlight of the day was President Donald Trump's first State of the Union address. The U.S. leader covered a diverse range of issues from North Korea to immigration policies. Lee Jung-yeon shares with us his remarks.
U.S. President Donald Trump delivered his maiden State of the Union speech to Congress on Tuesday. He said maximum pressure will be placed on North Korea as he referred to the regime's cruel dictatorship and its reckless pursuit of nuclear missiles that could threaten the U.S.
Complacency and concessions only invite aggression and provocation. I will not repeat the mistakes of past administrations that got us into this very dangerous position.
He also narrated the incident with the late Otto Warmbier, whose family was present at the address, as well as the story of the North Korean defector Ji Sang-ho, who was also in the audience. Aside from comments on the regime, he mainly stressed unity and reconciliation of different parties to come together for the people. Immigration took a pivotal portion of his speech. He said he would push for policies that focus on the best interests of American workers and American families by crafting a bipartisan approach to immigration reform. He mentioned the 4 Pillars Plan. This includes a pathway to provide citizenship to 1.8 million unregistered immigrants in the U.S., building a wall on the southern border with Mexico, abolishing the visa lottery to move towards a merit-based immigration system, and ending chain migration to protect the nuclear family. He also took credit for the record-low unemployment rate and rising wages after years of stagnation and claimed that 2.4 million new jobs were created since his election. Trump called on the Congress to produce a bill that generates at least $1.5 trillion for investment on new infrastructure to permanently fix the infrastructure deficit. He also said the U.S. has enacted the biggest tax cuts and reforms in its history, a move that, according to Trump, will provide tremendous relief for the middle class and small businesses. Lee Jung-yeon, Arirang News.
Trump's address not only sent a message to Americans, but also to the global population. Kim Mo-kyun zooms in on the part of his speech that holds extra significance for South Korea.
North Korea and trade, These two topics were the major concerns of many Koreans in President Trump's long-awaited speech. The U.S. president spoke of numerous concerns surrounding the U.S. and talked in depth about North Korea. He mentioned North Korea's heightened level of threat to the U.S., Washington's maximum pressure on the regime, and its determination not to repeat the past mistakes of previous administrations. This time around, Trump's tone was milder than his past speech at the UN General Assembly, where he gave a stern warning to North Korea. An expert says that this could be due to a possible sign of the easing of tensions between the two Koreas ahead of the PyeongChang Winter Olympics.
Due to the PyeongChang Olympics, signs of cooperation have been observed between the two Koreas. I think the ultimate goal of the U.S. is not focused on the cooperation itself, but the possibility that South Korea could bring North Korea back to talks for denuclearization through dialogue.
The expert, however, added that Washington's firm stance against North Korea's nuclear and missile provocations remains unchanged, saying that if the denuclearization of the regime cannot be reached through peaceful talks, President Trump will be ready to achieve that goal through heightened military pressure. When it comes to trade, the American leader just used 5 sentences, short but strong, to shed light on its America First policy. An economic expert says Trump's declaration of an end to the era of economic surrender and his expectations towards fair and reciprocal trade relationships seem to consider the existing free trade deal with Korea as bad.
By saying fixing bad deals, I think he referred to trade agreements that benefited other nations more than the US, such as NAFTA and the Chorus FDA. He even hinted of scrapping the old and negotiating totally new deals when things don't go well.
The expert said that Trump's remarks on protecting American workers could also deal a big blow to Korea, as the American leader is likely referring to keeping jobs and wages for its nationals, especially in the manufacturing sector, where Korea is seen as a competitor. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
North Korea is preparing for its military parade, complete with hundreds of citizens, soldiers, vehicles, and weapons. The question is, does the regime's decision to hold an armed forces event on the eve of the Winter Games violate the latest Olympic Truce Resolution? Oh Jung-hee delves deeper into the issue.
North Korea's preparations for its military parade on February 8th are in full swing. According to Voice of America, satellite images taken on Sunday show Pyongyang's Kim Il-sung Square filled with people in red and yellow. South Korean government sources also say roughly 50,000 people are prepping for the parade at the North's medium airfield. The February 8th parade comes after Pyongyang declared the completion of its weapons program in the year the regime celebrates the 70th anniversary of its establishment. Experts say to add meaning to the event, Pyongyang could showcase its yet-to-be unveiled Hwasong-13 ICBM or 북극성-3 SLBM.
North Korea will definitely showcase its Hwasong 12, 14 and 15 missiles. And there's also a high possibility it will show other missiles whose exterior won't be revealed, but this will raise curiosity over what they are.
Showcasing ICBMs and conventional weapons on the eve of the Olympics. Should this be seen as an act of provocation or even as a violation of the Olympics Truce Resolution? The resolution adopted by the UN General Assembly last November aims to halt hostilities throughout the Olympics and Paralympics period. And South Korea's military is ambiguous on its stance.
The military will continuously monitor North Korea's movements and keep a full-fledged military readiness posture in preparation for any possibilities.
Experts say the North's parade isn't a direct violation of the Olympics Truce Resolution, but it does leave room for a downturn in peaceful atmosphere on the Korean peninsula.
The military parade is for Pyongyang's political propaganda, so I don't think it directly goes against the truce resolution, which emphasizes physical hostilities. But the North still aims to show off its nuclear power, which does violate the Olympic spirit of pursuing peace.
The parade is neither a provocation nor a violation against an international agreement, but it's widely seen as the regime's central stage for showing off its weapons. The key for South Korea will be to read through Pyongyang's intentions and ensure maximum security throughout the Games. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
In the domestic political arena, one of the key agendas during the month-long parliamentary session is policy speeches by the leaders of major parties. First up, the Democratic Party of Korea. Kim Min-ji has the highlights from the ruling bloc's turn at the podium.
Improving people's livelihoods was the core emphasis of the policy speech by Woo Won-sik, the floor leader of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea. He noted that although the country's per capita income is poised to touch the $30,000 mark, there's more than meets the eye. Internally, South Korea suffers from low growth and faces a slew of social problems, such as a shrinking working population, real estate bubble, and wealth polarization. To overcome such issues at stake, Yu called for the creation of a body comprised of lawmakers, social and economic entities.
It's aimed at pulling out a social compromise on various policies, from labor and welfare to regulations. We will also be able to better reflect the voices of young people, women, irregular workers, and small companies. With the National Assembly involved, we will also be able to swiftly take care of legislative affairs.
Yu also vowed to push for a fair economy by reforming the country's conglomerates, as well as foster manpower and infrastructure in line with the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution. He said investments will be centered on the people, which in turn will raise the competitiveness of companies and the country overall. The floor leader also promised to carry out a constitutional amendment that's focused on bettering people's lives, as well as swiftly reform the power organs of the country to restore democracy.
We will open-mindedly talk with the opposition on areas they are concerned about. But let me reaffirm that we are not trying to control the power organs. We will accept the opposition's request for the National Assembly to handpick the head of an independent agency to handle investigations that involve high-ranking officials.
He also called for the opposition's cooperation so that North Korea's participation in the PyeongChang Winter Olympics can be the first steps to achieving peace on the peninsula, while also urging Pyongyang to change its attitude. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Round 2 of talks to amend Seoul-Washington free trade deal begins in the nation's capital. The meeting comes amid rising tensions between the two sides over U.S. safeguard measures on washers and solar panels. Here's Kim Hye-sung with a closer look.
A second round of talks to revise the Korea-U.S. free trade agreement. Negotiators from South Korea and the U.S., represented by Yoo Myung-hee, Director General for South Korea's Trade Ministry's Trade Policy Bureau, and our U.S. counterpart, Assistant Trade Representative Michael Beeman, kicked off their two-day meeting in Seoul. Before entering the talks, Yoo said she'll focus on maximizing Korea's national interest, and the two sides will discuss details on topics raised during the first round of talks in Washington. During the initial meeting in early January, Seoul raised issues with the investor-state dispute settlement cause and ways to protect its agricultural industry, while the U.S. presented proposals to improve its auto exports and lift trade barriers. As of 2017, Korea's trade surplus with the U.S. was about $18 billion, with car exports accounting for over 70% of the surplus. At the same time, South Korea is expected to raise the issue of Washington's safeguard measures. A week ago, the Trump administration imposed tariffs on foreign residential washing machines and solar cells, including those from South Korea, saying they hurt U.S. local industry. The safeguard measure, which was imposed for the first time against Korea in 16 years, would lead to tariffs of up to 50% on imported washing machines, and a 30% tariff will be applied on imported solar panels after the first 2.5 gigawatts in the first year. Calling the move excessive, South Korea has filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, Samsung Electronics has outdone itself again. The tech titan recorded a huge surge in its fourth quarter profits, mainly thanks to rising chip demand. Cha Sang-mi breaks down the uplifting digits for us.
Samsung Electronics say it recorded an operating profit of about $14 billion for the final quarter of 2017, up 64% from the year before. The company's fourth quarter revenue was around $61.5 billion, up 23% on year. Looking at the full year, the company recorded sales of $223.4 billion in 2017, with an operating profit of over $50 billion, nearly double that of the year before, and the best performance in Samsung Electronics history. All of this over strong demand for memory chips and sales of high-end display panels that go into Apple's iPhone X. The company's operating profits from its semiconductor businesses came to nearly $33 billion last year, accounting for over 65% of the company's total operating profit. The IT mobile sector, which covers smartphones, made an operating profit of $2.6 billion for the fourth quarter, falling from $3 billion in the third quarter on increased marketing costs for smartphones. As for the prospects for 2018, experts say the strong global chip demand will continue, but OLED profitability could drop in the first quarter due to the off-season in smartphone market. 차상미, Arirang News.
The company also announced a 50-to-1 split of its stocks. Samsung carried out such a move for the first time, citing demand from investors. Kwon Jang-ho gets us up to speed with the attention-grabbing development in the tech realm.
In a surprise move, Samsung Electronics announced a massive stock split for the first time in the company's history. In a press release on Wednesday, the tech giant said it has approved a 50-to-1 stock split after it had received numerous requests for the stock split based on views that a high share price was a hindrance to potential investors. Samsung said its board of directors believe the stock split will make the investing in Samsung Electronics more accessible and provide dividends to a wider range of investors. The company added that it also expects to add both liquidity and marketability to Samsung stock, which may contribute to enhancing corporate value in the long term. Upon the announcement, the company's shares jumped as high as 8% before dropping to 0.2% when trade closed, although it did end up outperforming the rest of the main bourse Kospi, which dropped by almost 1.3%. The total value of Samsung's shares is not set to change, but the price of one share, which is currently worth around $2,400, could in a few months' time, post-split, cost less than $50. The tech giant had previously rejected the possibility of such a move, but despite the value of its shares increasing by 41% last year, the about face suggests the company might have had trouble attracting retail investors.
I think the Samsung Electronics did feel a frustration in regards to that. Their market capitalization is so large relative to the Kospi index. So because of that, they think that it is undervalued because of a lot of the local investors who really did not invest in this stock.
With Samsung shares taking up some 20% of the total value of the Korea's main stock exchange, investors are also bracing for broader impact on the Korean stock market.
Overall, I think that it might improve the liquidity into the system and to the Samsung Electronics shares. I think in order for more investors to invest, I think they have to pay more dividend. If there is more payout ratio happening, then the Korean equity market as well as Samsung Electronics should do much better in the future.
The final approval on the stock split decision will be made at the company's annual shareholders meeting in March, and it's not expected to come into force until May. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, we get to see the super blue blood moon for the first time in 35 years here in Korea. Do enlighten us.
Well, Daniel, it's a rare celestial show that brings together a supermoon, a blue moon, and a total lunar eclipse. Now, the sky will be clear to see the once-in-a-lifetime spectacle, so don't miss it because the next one will show up after 19 years. Now, tomorrow the nation will wake up to high levels of dust concentration in the air. We will also be under the influence of high pressure front, which will give us sunny skies, but also expect conditions to be dry. Tomorrow morning, the central region will wake up to colder readings than today. Seoul will start off the morning at -8 degrees Celsius. Daegu and Busan are partly cloudy over at -4 and -1 degrees respectively. The daytime highs will bounce back up to the average levels, with Seoul rising to 1 degrees, while Gwangju and Busan hitting up to 6 and 8 degrees. Another cold spell will sweep off the nation as we enter the weekend, and more snow is in store for the southern areas. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we could squeeze into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you for staying with us wherever you may be tuning in from.